It is the first in a series of 3 on evaluation that we are running in August, and is presented by our CSI associate, Rachael Trotman. Rachael is a social researcher and evaluator, and who has a passion for supporting people to understand and communicate the difference they are making. She learned how to evaluate by doing it, and has been learning for the last 20 years, making evaluation lean and meaningful is her aim. Really looking forward to this morning's presentation. Tēnā koe, Rachael.
Kia ora, Karinia, and thank you for that opening. And kia ora koutou to you all. Thanks so much for joining today. I'm really looking forward to this session. We've got a lot of content here for you today. The aim is really for you to get at least one great evaluation framework to use, and also more clarity on how to design and do evaluation in your space. I'll just bring up the slides here. Okay, so in terms of what we're going to cover today, I'm going to start by just saying a few things about evaluation frameworks, what they are, what they do. And then I'm going to share 3 frameworks that I've found really useful and that I've used myself. And after each one, I'll do some sharing about the framework, and then we're going to have just a really short 5-minute breakout after the first 2 in particular, for you to just share with a couple of others how that landed for you, what you liked, how you might use it. After the third one, the theories of change, we'll just see how we're going for time. We might just have a Q&A, and I might also ask you for some frameworks that you've found useful yourself. So you don't need to take copious notes from today. You're going to get the slides. You're going to get a little kite of other resources and useful links. And I really want to encourage you to put questions that you've got as we go along in the chat. If I can't get to them as we go, which I probably won't get to most because there is a lot to share, I will also include responses to those in the material that comes to you afterwards. So please feel free to comment and put questions in the chat as we go. Okay, so let's get into it. Evaluation frameworks. Let's see, I'll put that down there. Okay, so the purpose of an evaluation framework helps you to plan basically how you're going to do evaluation and learning in your space. They give you a bit of a roadmap. They make it clear where you're putting your evaluative focus and energy. It needs to work for your context and what's going on for you, particularly what you need to know, your evaluative questions. And in terms of evaluative questions, so many of us race into evaluation without being clear about what it is we want to know out of it. So your framework helps you identify and deliver on what you need to know. So it needs to respond to those key things. And it's important for you to develop the things you need to know, your evaluation questions, with the people who are going to use the findings, whether that's your community, people you're working directly with, your board, your team, government, whoever it might be. Make sure it's responding to what they want to know. So evaluation questions address things like these things in the circle. So the extent to which you met the things you were trying to achieve, and who benefited from the work you've been doing. Questions of value. Was it worth it, especially in relation to the time and energy and costs that you've put in? What was the quality like? Is it leading to something ongoing or sustainable? And a lot of evaluation questions focus on learning. What was most effective? What supported change? How could we do better and strengthen? What are the implications for our practice? Those kinds of questions. I thought it was worthwhile just to point to a couple of common things that people do that are kind of habits to unlearn. So the first one is not having clear things that you want to answer through your evaluation. Taking the time to really make that crystal clear, and taking the time to ask the people who are going to receive the evaluation what they want to know. Another common thing we do is leap into measures or gathering information without having those clear questions to answer. I know, a lot of groups think, well, if we have a few good metrics, then we're all sweet. But without having questions to answer, those might not tell you what you need to know. Something that you also see a lot is reporting results by kind of data source. So say you interviewed 15 people, you did a survey, people report back on those things instead of weaving all the findings together and structuring them around your key questions. It's good to really be critical about the frameworks, including the ones that we're about to go through. How might they work in your context? Do they make sense for what it is you need to know? Quite often there's kind of the latest thing. There's the latest trend of frameworks. So really look hard at each one and see whether it's going to be useful in your space. So this is from Jane Davidson, helpful article she wrote there. And she also has a website called Real Evaluation, I think. She's a New Zealander, amazing evaluator. It's worth looking at her website. Okay, so we're going to move straight in now to the first framework. I've just called it Old and New Knowledge. You'll see why in a moment. So this came through this amazing woman here, Dr. Manulani Mea. She's a well-known scholar, author, speaker. She did a PhD back in 2013 around Indigenous epistemology or Indigenous knowledge systems and ways of knowing. She also helped create the first Indigenous Masters program in the world here in Aotearoa. Got a link to it there. One of the things she says is that aloha, she's Hawaiian, or aroha is the true intelligence of the planet, the intelligence with which we meet life. And there's a link to an article she wrote in the resources that you'll get from today. What she shares, she's worked and studied in this space for a very long time, and she's really gotten to grips with different ways of knowing and how to bring that into this field of evaluation is what we're going to look at now. So through her PhD study, she looked at ancient knowledge systems, and she also looked at quantum physics, new science, and saw that these all reassert three basic forms of knowledge that are inseparable, all connected. So knowledge is physical, mental, and spiritual. It comes through the body, the physical world, the mind, the mental world, and the spiritual, felt, and unseen worlds. So in very recent times, these ways of knowing have been separated, particularly in the Western world, yet they are interconnected and simultaneous. So Manulani is saying that the ancient knowledge systems, Indigenous knowledge, and quantum science reasserts them as inseparable, which is why the old and new knowledge. So the challenge for us, and today in terms of evaluation, is how to bring these together and bring them to the way that we evaluate. Just unpacking those three a little bit more. She goes into this a lot more in the article that we've shared. But here, body refers to, the physical, external phenomena that we experience and observe. So, throughout human history, we've learnt through observation of the world. Mind is the internal, the mental, subjective, qualitative, available through ideas and thought. And spirit refers to the unseen, non-physical dimensions of life: energy, wairua, intuition, what we sense, the spiritual dimensions. And in that article, she lays out how different knowledge systems have conceived of body, mind, and spirit. Here's just a few examples which kind of illustrates the different ways that knowledge systems have framed body, mind, and spirit. Our education system privileges the mind, but there's movements all around the world to reconnect these and to see them as connected. So Manulani gave a talk to Mā Te Rai, which is the Māori Evaluation Association, at a conference they held, I think it was 2019. And she applied this triad approach to evaluation. And these were the terms she gave when thinking about evaluation. So the body can refer to measurement, mind, reflection, and spirit. She's called it witnessing, but you could call it whatever you like. So the approach in this framework is to develop your evaluation questions and then create processes to gather information from all of these three realms and weave it together in response to what you want to know. So I'm going to show you how I did this recently through an example. I was evaluating an arts advocacy network for Te Taumata Toi Iwi, the Auckland Regional Arts Trust here. They run a network, comes together every couple of months. So I thought, well, let's try this approach. So we looked at what we wanted to know about the network, asked some key questions. Who's part of it? How's it changing and growing? Who's benefiting? What's happening with relationships? What's coming out of it? And what are we learning? And what does that mean going forward? These are kind of classic evaluation questions. And when we looked at using this frame to answer those questions, this is how it, this is what we came up with. So the measurement side was kind of looking at what's happening with the network itself. What is it producing in terms of ways for people to connect? What new actions, collaborations, initiatives, relationships are coming out of it? What new resources? So that's a kind of more quantifying set of things there. For the mind, we held team reflections after every network session. And these questions here have actually come out of a few years of practice from the Southern Initiative in Auckland. These questions, I use them all the time for reflective processes. And if you are using these questions, adapt them as you like, obviously, on a regular basis for your work, they create a really rich pool of evidence and learning that can save you when it comes to reporting time. So I recommend these questions generally. And in the witnessing, we talked to some other people. We talked to people involved in the network, some of the partners involved in holding it. And then every now and then we'd have a deep dive within the network itself to explore what people were feeling and sensing in terms of what was happening with the network and what was coming out of it. And we use quite creative processes to do that. You'll also notice in the reflection questions that they do cover the mind, body, spirit aspects. So that is the first framework. So I just want to take 5 minutes for you to just kind of process that a little bit. We're going to put you in groups of 3. Just introduce yourself, and then we'll put these questions in the chat as well. Just go around and just see, well, how did that land with you? What did you like about it? What might you use in your space? And also, you can feel free to put any questions in the chat, and I can try and address them when we come back. So if anyone has any questions arising, put them in the chat. There was a question about, could you talk more to the processes you use for the witnessing aspect? So this is the kind of spiritual, unseen elements. And some of you may also have things that you use. So these are creative processes for actually getting us out of our heads and into our intuition, our feeling, our wairua space to kind of access what's going on at a deeper level. So some of the things that we've used are drawing. So if you ask people to draw where they started at the beginning of something, and where they, and draw again where they are now, and talk to those things, because it brings out different kinds of, senses, and it brings out your intuition. Questions like, how do you feel about this? What is your gut telling you? What is your intuition saying to you about this? So a lot of it can be done in the questions you use. Other processes we've used things like asking people to go outside with a question and spending 5 minutes in reflection outside, thinking, just reflecting on that. Other processes people have used video, using video stories, having a creative journal or workbook that you ask people to just record what they're seeing, hearing, and feeling, and sensing about something. You're really trying to draw out, the deeper knowledge. And you can ask questions like, what's the earth saying to us here? What would my ancestor, what would my tupuna say about this? You're drawing on your ancestry, all that's gone before. You can ask, what would my future mokopuna say about this? So there's a lot of things that you can play with, I guess. Here we go. Sistema, thank you. Make a sound. Yeah. A movement, movement. Interpretive dance is a bit of a joke. We'll do an interpretive dance, but actually I've been part of processes where people do an interpretive dance around an evaluative issue. So, it's up to you. Any other examples? Thank you for that one. Any other questions? Yes, it can be vulnerable for some people. Making a safe space for that is really important. And actually just welcoming anything that comes up without judgment, letting, whatever it is be. So there's no blaming, shaming, wronging of anybody. You just see what is. And often, triggers might come up, trauma might come up. You welcome it in, and the group can just hold it and dissolve it. There's a whole lot of processes around how to do that. And some of you are working in organisations that are experts in that, dealing with people's hurts. So you can actually design processes that support people around that as well. So when you're asking people, how was this service or program or whatever we did with you, how was it for you? Asking the questions in a way as, well, how did it feel to you? What did your gut tell you? Those kinds of things can be really powerful. Has anyone got any other questions that you want to ask or examples of how you draw out information before we move on? I love what I didn't say about this framework as well is that it is very inclusive of everybody and everything. It's intercultural. Every culture has expressions for body, mind, spirit. They're all familiar with these things. So people can tap into them in ways that work for them. Okay, so let's move on to our next framework. And I'll just do that. Okay, so this one's called Success Evidence Strategies. I actually just used this framework this morning to help design a learning session with an organisation I'm working with. And we're going to use that session to draw out their major successes and impacts over the last few years, because they're also writing an impact report. So this amazing wahine toa here, Kataraina Pepe. I've worked with Kataraina before. She's an amazing evaluator, facilitator, and a musician. She works a lot with TetraMap that some of you may be familiar with. TetraMap uses the 4 elements of air, fire, earth, and water as a tool to do all sorts of things. So that is also used for evaluation, actually. So you can look up TetraMap and have a look at that. She promotes and is a real holder here of the PATH planning tool, which is a visual tool often used working with whānau to get out their aspirations, their dreams, their hopes, visualize those, and also work out paths towards those. That's originally a Canadian tool, but it's really landed here and it's used a lot. Whānau Ora and others use it a lot. Her music's also on Spotify. Let's throw that in. She's always got a guitar. The whakapapa of this tool, I don't know, 15 years ago, Kataraina and Fiona Cram and some other researchers were working on an iwi Māori provider success project. So they brought together 60 providers from across sectors and asked them to explore why they were successful. So they really unpacked what success looks like. And I know success is a problematic term for some people, but then they gathered evidence to substantiate that. And of course, they saw that cultural factors were really critical in supporting their success, what they do as Māori. So Kataraina saw that and developed SES as a tool that recognises and values that knowledge. So what it looks like, it has 5 parts to it. And of course, you can adapt this however you like, but this is generally how it rolls. And I've known quite a few organisations, this is what they use. This is the main thing they use. Firstly, for anything you're working on, it could be your whole organisation or it could be one initiative, identify successes or achievements that you've made. It's up to you what you choose. Could be a tiny thing, could be something really major. So you're looking for what worked. And then you're looking for the evidence supporting that success, and particularly asking these questions. What did you see, hear, feel, and what were the facts? And you'll notice that the mind, body, spirit all comes into play here. And So you've got what's working, how you know it's working. And then, and this is a really key part, you're unpacking what made that achievement or success happen. What was really critical? What wouldn't it have happened without? And she says, you know, really go to town on that, ideally 7 to 9 strategies for each success. What was going on there? And then you can look at that across your successes and you're bound to notice a bunch of common themes. So you've got your successes, the things that brought them into being. You step back and you reflect on that picture. So what are we seeing here? What really helped us? What got in the way? What does all this mean going forward? And then she says, if it's appropriate, you can then actually develop some formulas, you know, for what you know works by theming the strategies that drove your success. So by doing this thing and this thing, we tend to, you know, move forward. So it's quite a, you know, clear, stepped out process. The thing I really love about this is that it draws through your change strategies, the things that you are specifically doing that are making change. So other things that are good about it, you can apply this to anything. You can use it for learning sessions, like I was mentioning before. It's focusing on strengths and what's working, which is where you do want to put your energy rather into the problem focus. And it brings forth all the things that are helping your success, including your tikanga, the way you're being, as well as what you're actually, your mindsets and what you're actually doing. And I'm just slyly weaving in the first framework here because it does ask you to evidence your success across mind, body, spirit. Yeah, and it really highlights what's working so that you can do more of it. Okay, so this is really quite a short framework. I'm just wondering, does anyone want to ask questions here before we go into another short breakout room? You can put questions in the chat if you don't want to speak up. Hello, welcome back. There were a couple of questions I'll just talk to. If you've got any other questions or comments, please put them on the chat and we will get to those. So Andrew asked, just checking if the evaluation is for the benefit of, well, who's it for? So for this tool, it can support evaluation findings for anyone. And it sort of comes back to that question of, well, the issue of what are my evaluation questions? What do I need to know here? So whenever you're designing an evaluation of any kind, you know, clearly it's, you know, what is this for? Who is this for? What do they need to know? What do we need to know? Quite often, organisations often feel like they're reporting to funders rather than evaluating and learning for themselves. First and foremost, it's yourselves that you need to get good feedback and learning loops going. And then funders kind of secondary. I know our systems don't really support that. But if you're covering off what funders need to know, then also pay the most attention to what you need to know to strengthen and move forward and, you know, make a greater difference. There was a question about what's an example of a formula. So an example might be, say you've got a program that's trying to support peer support between parents. So the strategies might be that if you create safe, welcoming spaces for parents to gather and invite them in well, and you manaaki them well, and you facilitate conversations about what's going on for them, then that will lead to parents talking about what's going on in their lives and helping each other with the issues they're facing. So that's an example. You can think of examples in your space as well. Yes. Strategies for influencing. Yes. That's funny because I'm working with funders now around that. And I think it's fair to say the awareness is growing amongst funders that we need to pretty much flip it on its head in terms of asking people to report on the funder strategy. Instead of asking for that, funders need to support groups to tell their story and to report on the impact they're making in their own ways. So that's a bit of a movement that's going on. Actually doing some research for Foundation North shortly on what is the latest thinking and practice on that very issue. So that's going to be coming out early next year, and we're hoping that that's going to help support the change in mindset and philanthropy at the moment. So the strategy I would have for influencing my funder would be to try and have a conversation with them about, what is it they really need to know and what you would like to know, and try and marry those two up. And also ask for some flexibility from them in terms of how you report. Is it possible to have a conversation? Is it possible for you to talk to them and they capture it? There's more roundtable reporting going on. Is it possible for you to do a short video? So yeah, we really need to stop this culture of running around gathering information to meet funder needs that doesn't go anywhere and is often not used. We want to turn it into what's going to be valuable for you. Is there anything else in there that I've missed? Any other comments or questions? People, has anyone used that SCS tool? No. Okay. All right, so let's move on to the final framework. This one, I could spend a whole session on this one, theories of change. I'll just share again. Okay, so theories of change have really grown in popularity over the last few years. And I think it's because people are really wanting to get beyond just identifying outcomes to what are the things that we're doing that are making a difference. What's our theory about how change works in our space, and getting sharper and sharper on those things. We're all sick of seeing the same issues repeating round and round. So a theory of change, it shows how and why you see your outcomes. It sets out your thinking between how you see the steps between what it is you're doing and the outcomes that you're seeing. You've probably heard of logic models, which tend to show our activities or our inputs, the things that we're doing, our resources, are going to lead to these outcomes, but it doesn't really talk about, so what are the strategies in between that you're going to use in delivering those activities to get to those outcomes. A theory of change is more focused on that change piece in the middle. It helps you to think through what it is you're trying to achieve and what your contribution to an issue should be. The how you're going to do that, beyond just we're going to run 2 workshops and, you know, run a bunch of activities. It helps you communicate your intent with others and how you go about your work. And out of a good theory of change really sort of falls out evaluation and learning activities. It also helps you adapt to change. So good theories of change, you know, they're not set in stone. They're constantly, you know, you're looking at them and iterating them as you learn more about what's effective in your world. So there's a million ways to do a theory of change, but these are the things that they tend to include, particularly this bit in the middle here. So they usually set out, so what's the issue or the challenge we're trying to address? And underneath it, a lot of them include the assumptions that are being made, any evidence that's supporting the rationale for the theory of change, and the values people are applying. But it's this bit in the middle that is the core to most theories of change. So you identify your outcomes, and most people, you can have 2 levels of outcomes, shorter term, longer term. A lot of people have a vision, you know, so there's usually a chain of outcomes between we're going to see these things in the short term, they'll lead to these things in the medium or longer term, and ultimately we'll get to a nirvana or a vision of some kind. And then stepping back from that, if we do these things, and these are the critical change strategies, if we are clear about the way we work and what are the strategies, the key strategies we're going to use to get to those outcomes, those strategies will take effect through the activities we do, then we'll get to move towards those outcomes. So in terms of how to go about developing a theory of change, you can start either at the end with the outcomes that you want to see, or you can start with the challenge. You know, it's best to start with the challenge that you want to address. So what is it that you're trying to influence? What about that challenge or issue do you want to make a change in? So what are the outcomes or changes that you want to make? And those outcomes may be to relationships, to processes, and an outcome refers to a change in something. It could be a relationship, a mindset or attitude, behaviours, practices, policies, investment. So clarify the changes that you want to make over what time frame. I think a lot of people are struggling with long time frames at the moment because we're living in such a fast changing landscape. So a lot of organisations I'm working with at the moment do 1 year and 3 year, because literally that's as far as they can see in their spaces. And then most critically look at the strategies you're going to use to bring about those changes. And what a lot of people don't do here is look at the evidence about what is effective in making those kinds of changes, and looking at the evidence from a much more diverse perspective than, you know, Western research or statistical data. What does Mātauranga Māori say about this issue? What does Samoan experience and knowledge say? You know, what is the lived experience saying we need and what is effective in this space? So having a much broader view. And your strategies also include your ways of working. And then the activities that you're actually going to give effect to those strategies too. So this is the kind of basic building blocks of a theory of change. Now, I'm just giving a couple of examples here. Don't worry about the words. I'm just showing you the structure of a theory of change here. So this is one from Point and Associates there, an Auckland-based research organisation. So this is a theory of change for a reading program with whānau in prison. So their structure is that if they do these things along the top, these are their core change strategies, that will lead to these kind of layers of outcomes. In the short term, they'll see these things, and then these things, and then longer term, and then ultimately. So they've actually got 4 layers of outcome here, and their key change strategies across the top. This is one example, and it's a really busy one. Some people have very simple theories of change. Here's another one. And again, don't worry about reading the words. I'm just showing you the structure here. So this is the Zero Hunger Collective in Aotearoa. What these people have done have put a lot of emphasis on the issue that they're trying to solve, which is the problem here. And they've said, this is what we know. This is our evidence. This is the problem. This is our evidence. And this is the impact of that problem. So they're really laying out in their theory of change what the issue is they're trying to address. And then on the right-hand side here, they're focusing on their change strategies. So, and their values, which are intertwined here. So upholding mana is a change strategy and a value. So they've got their change strategies on the right, and then on the bottom, they've got a if we, so that then ultimately kind of approach. So that they're saying if we do these change strategies on the right, then we will lead to our vision, which is right up the top here, which you can't see. Oops. Which is about everyone having dignified access to enough good food. So there's hundreds of examples of theories of change that I could show you. But I'm just going to pause there to see if there's any questions, or I've actually got a summary slide. I think we might do that. And then maybe instead of going into our breakout, we might just come back for any questions and comments. So, summary here. Evaluation frameworks are roadmaps for how you want to do your evaluation and learn about what you're doing. The sort of takeaway messages, I guess, are paying attention to and weaving together these body, mind, and spirit ways of knowing. We all tend to privilege our heads and our cognitive thought, and also the body, which can represent kind of the quantifiable data. But delving deeper is important to really get to how change works. Your framework should make explicit or lead you to what it is you need to know and provide the means to answer those questions. It needs to work for your context and be done in your way. So I'm just going to stop sharing and see if you've got some questions. Okay. Yes, this trend with funders. Good point, Lenny. Yeah. I think in some respects, philanthropy could actually lead the way with some of these different ways of evaluating and learning and reporting. Where's the evaluative piece in the theory of change? So how do you get to your evaluation from the theory of change? So the theory of change maps out how you think change is going to happen. From there, you will be designing processes and questions that will answer whether you are actually making that progress. So it just points to those things. It doesn't design it for you. Would need to have a longer session to show you how to move from a theory of change framework into processes to help you work out whether you're actually moving in that direction. The SES tool could do that for you. Manulani's framework could help you. Yeah. Andrew. Yeah, that's a good question. You know, I think as people, we naturally tend to focus on what's wrong or what the problem is. It is quite good to flip that around into a what's working focus. That in itself can be quite transformative for organisations. It doesn't mean that you don't pay any attention to what's not going well, but we can get really fixated on the blocks and the barriers. So this could be a practice for you to try, is to always start with what's working, what do we need to do more of, what do we need to let go. Yeah. Okay. Yeah, that's right, Louise. Opportunity for change. Okay. Eliza. Yes. Though really theories of change are your thought process. And I guess the key point I'm making today about a theory of change is making your change strategies explicit are a key value of them. Most people just put the activities they're doing and they don't pay enough attention to, well, what are our actual strategies to get to these outcomes? Okay, I've got one question that I want to ask you. It's a little, if are there any more questions? Here we go. Give me, yeah. Thanks, Valerie. It's just these little things of turning something around that can really shift the emphasis. I'm going to try a little Mentimeter here thing. We'd love to hear from you what you will take forward from today. If there's just one thing, or, you know, you can have more. I'm going to put a link in the chat. I'm going to try and do something fancy. Okay. Just bear with me for a second. Okay, so I'm putting a link in the chat. And if you can click on this, and I'm going to share my screen, it should ask you a question. What will you take forward from today? I'm going to see if we can have a look at that. Yeah, wherever I've shared SES, it is very popular with people. Yeah. Well, that's good. You know, I think it would be quite valuable to put together a list of practices for bringing body and spirit into our processes and of learning and evaluating. Could be something that we do some work on. Yeah, more feeling reflections. We ignore our intuition so often, don't we? Well, yeah. And the body doesn't lie. What your gut's telling you is usually is right. Yeah, I encourage you to check out path planning as well. It's a great tool for working with anyone to tip out what it is important to them, what they need. Yeah, give theory of change a go. There's so much online about it. And just find a format that makes sense to you. Yeah, I think we could well do a whole theory of change session in the future. So we'll look to that. You know, we do a practical one where people can bring along something and actually work one out together. Yeah. Okay. There's lots of common themes around the bringing together mind, body, spirit. Awesome. Thanks, everyone. You can keep going on that. This is really helpful for us to, you know, design future offerings as well. Okay. Keep going. We won't lose it, but I'll just stop sharing. And we'll see if anyone's got any final comments or questions. Otherwise, we'll hand back to, is it you, Karinia? Yeah. Okay, thanks everyone. We're going to finish a little bit early. I thought I had a load of content, but turns out I could have put more in. Thank you all for joining. Over to you, Karinia.
Oh, kia ora, Rachel. That was an amazing session. I mean, to be able to share with us 3 evaluation frameworks, each standing in their own right, was incredible. And I hope, and I know from the Mentimeter there that you're all taking away so many pieces of taonga that you can add to your kete. Before you go, we will add a survey into the link. We're always very keen to get feedback on our sessions and how we can continue to help build the capability within the sector. Once again, I'd like to acknowledge the support of Foundation North, who kindly allow us to bring these sessions through to you. And hopefully you're all registered for our second session, which will take place on the 23rd of August. And Rachel will be joining us again, and the theme for that session is putting the value in evaluation. How can we know what good looks like? Once again, thank you so much. Lovely to have you join us this morning. I will close us out with a karakia. Have a wonderful day, and I look forward to seeing you all on the 23rd of August. Nō reira, kia whakairia te tapu, kia waitai te ara, kia tura ki whakatahai, kia tura ki whakatahai, haumie hui e, tai ki e.